The number one concern that I've seen with people about using the carrier system specifically for the big bikes, because at this point, we're talking 100 pounds for a rack almost, so 90 pounds, like I mentioned, throw a couple extra straps on here, we're up there. And then you've got a bike on here that's gonna be plus or minus 500 pounds. We're a 600-pound load sitting on the back of that receiver. If you're not able to ride your bike and you really need to bring it with you, trailers aren't always the best option. They're bulky, they're difficult in traffic, it's extra licensing, you have to store it. There are alternatives. At 90 pounds with the straps, the rack and ride system is certainly likely one of the most robust, if not the most robust bike carrier on the market. But at that weight, I hope you go to the gym if you're doing it alone. This thing is not lightweight, but of course, that also means it's built with extremely stable channel and tubes, and the build quality is far beyond anything else I've seen on the market. To start off, a rack carrier is a pretty simple setup. It uses the receiver just to hold the bike behind the vehicle. This one is a premium carry. This is a rack and ride. This one's made out of Australia. It is more expensive than many of the other racks, but that's because it also comes more equipped. So it does have its own ramp. It has its own stowage. And when I'm putting an expensive motorcycle on the back of my vehicle, I don't know if I want to cheap out on how I'm going to carry it. Now, as far as loading it up, it's very simple. Once you put your ramp in place, you just power the bike up the ramp and strap it down. And once it gets up into this position, it does have a lock for the front wheel where it locks in. Some carriers have a rocking wheel lock. This one just has a jam on the front. And this is the part that will often make riders feel a little bit sketchy. I do like the rack and ride system because they do have built-in straps that are an option on the systems, and they run right to the foot pegs. This allows me to give the bike just a little bit of extra support as I'm moving around to strap the bike down. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and come up and grab the other front strap. I'm just going to use my body here to kind of hold it in place a little bit. Run that strap up and underneath the forks. Now, one thing I did notice about using this while I'm driving is that when I get going down the road, and if you accelerate or brake hard, because the bike is suspended, it can lean to and from the vehicle, which the first time you see it, it'll probably freak you out. But what that means is that when you strap these down, make sure that these front straps take that slack out of that suspension. This way, when the bike rocks, it's not going to move as much. It'll wiggle, but it's not actually going to go anywhere. Rack and ride for the adventure bikes is rated for 660 pounds. And I do highly recommend buying their strap system to go with it. If you're going to spend the money, go all the way in. But it's 90 pounds, so you definitely need a little bit of heft or strength to be able to get this into place, but that also tells you how much material is being used. The considerations we need to have about this is that you are now 20 inches out behind the receiver in length, and you're around 32 inches length to the back of the bar here. That means if you're pulling in or out of a gas station or someplace that's ramped, you're much more likely to drag the bottom of this bar, so you need to be more aware of that. And that's, no matter what vehicle you have. Okay, so you've decided that the bike carrier might be the perfect solution for you. I've got one more thing that you have to think about, and that is you might have to have overloads or airbags to correct the ride height of your vehicle. Whether you have an SUV or a truck, the same principle is going to play here. I'm just going to talk about the F-150 that my bike is sitting on right here. The truck has 3 different load capacities that matter to me, and that is the bed capacity. That's if I put the bike in the back of the truck. That's the tongue capacity, and that's if it's sitting on a trailer, and just that trailer with no distribution hitch is sitting on the hitch itself. And then there's a distribution weight, which means I can carry a much bigger trailer, because even though I have more weight at the tongue, the distribution hitch carries that weight farther back into the trailer, allowing me to pull a bigger trailer. The motorcycle doesn't fit into any of those, and is the worst case scenario, because here I have that entire weight of the motorcycle sitting 20 inches back and behind the truck, working as a lever. What this means is that when it sits back behind the truck, I can carry much less weight than if it was in the bed of the truck, because it causes the back to squat and the front to sit high. That riding high in the front, the poor attitude of the vehicle, or in my case, if it was my truck, would affect both the handling and the braking, making it less stable, less safe, and potentially dangerous. So if you're going to carry one of these on the back of your vehicle, make sure that your ride height is correct and that both those axles are riding about the same height. Now, if you look at most trucks, you'll notice that the front of the truck dips down and the back of the truck sits high when it's empty, and that's because the manufacturers are compensating for the fact that that truck is supposed to be carrying things and pulling things. So they make the truck for that. So the guys that level out their trucks are guys who use them as cars, not as trucks. Otherwise, every time they put something in the back or tow something, they make their vehicle less stable. The distribution load on this particular hitch, even though the tongue weight is 500 pounds, the distribution weight is over 1,100 pounds. That's the receiver load that we have, and that's not considering the fact that when we're pulling a trailer and that trailer is bouncing and moving with leverage, that there are much greater forces than even this bike bouncing up and down or moving around in that hitch. So as far as the receiver is concerned, most of these, if you want to be safe, as long as your total load is not going to exceed that distribution load on the hitch, you should be good to go as far as the receiver hitch is concerned. Now, since the bikes are balanced, and most bikes are about a 50-50 balance front to back axle, that this bike is riding dead center over that hitch, and it means that it really is carrying the load straight down. And although it can get to rocking and moving, unless you're doing some severe off-road or some serious stuff you probably shouldn't be doing with a bike hanging off the back of your vehicle, that's just not going to be an issue. But that's it, guys. So I have used this one several times now. I've carried my GS on it. I've carried the Desert X and the Tenere 700. All the bikes have carried very well behind it. Most of the time I've been using a 4-strap, even though they recommend 6, unless I'm doing a long trip or something really bumpy. If I'm doing local transport, then I'm just doing the 4. The simplicity of not having to find trailer parking, not worried about the swing, being able to back up more easily when I'm in congested areas, and certainly if I'm going into California, not worrying about those speed laws for pulling a trailer. It is definitely something worth considering if you have the vehicle and the confidence to use this. Anyways, guys, hopefully I answered the questions that you had in mind regarding one of these systems if you're looking at it. They do make aluminum ones. I've seen them on the market, other steel ones. Anything that's going to be a heavy 600+ pound load limit are always going to be a heavier unit for sure. Thanks for watching the channel. Remember, ride with a smile, and attitude matters.